this is one of my takeaways. I don't think this race had anything to do with Kamala Harris much at all, to be honest with you. She was almost like a non-present. Nobody was talking about her. Nobody was excited about her. This was a race that was either you were for Donald Trump and ready for change, or you just hated Donald Trump. But when she jumped in this race, she immediately made everything about Donald Trump, never gave anybody a reason to vote for her or against her. And it was almost like she was a non-presence on the ground.
Getting back to the things we were talking about earlier with masculinity, I think men in general revolted against the Democrat Party, but brown men really did, because we do believe that there's two sexes, and we believe that the sexes are complementary and that they serve each other by God's design. And so Hispanic men went overwhelmingly for Trump. That's a crushing defeat.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. It's Friday. I think I'm kind of giddy. The euphoria and the exhaustion are all kind of coming together, and I'm just excited to chill. The number of phone calls and texts from all my new friends is amazing. Thank you for everyone who suddenly decided they want to serve in government and help President Trump, but we'll get to that later. A lot to break down. He made his first big choice last night. Susie Wiles, as Politico puts it, a woman from Florida, will be the first woman to be chief of staff, which is, I got to say, for a guy that's a misogynist, to start off this way is not good. The idea that Trump has appointed a top, strong female to lead the White House for the first time in history is just not doing well for this misogynist. I don't know how he's going to keep that record up, but we'll break it down with the panel. Let me get on to this. I want to talk about a great guy, though, that probably won't serve in government, but it's doing great work out in California. Leo Grillo, the founder of Delta Rescue. Guys, we've animals ironically came into this dialogue a lot during the campaign, but Leo Grillo is a good guy that's been rescuing animals all and founded, after one dog that he saved, the largest no-kill sanctuary for life. It's not a shelter. It's a sanctuary. He gets these abused, abandoned, neglected, malnutritioned animals, dogs, cats, horses, doesn't matter, and brings them into Delta Rescue and gets them all the help they need for life. If you go to deltarescue.org, you actually will see what I mean. And it's cool because it shows the evolution of what's happened at Delta Rescue and how it's grown and the work that Leo Grillo does there. He needs our help. This isn't a government handout, right? So if you can go there onto deltarescue.org and make a contribution, that's awesome. What I would really ask you to do, if you see that estate planning kit at the top, just go to it, download it, read it, and just pray on it and say, hey, this is for me. I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover. I rescue animals, and I appreciate the work that he's doing, and I want to keep it going. So just do me a favor. If nothing else, click on the estate planning link at deltarescue.org and think if this is something that you can make part of your legacy. All right, guys, I mentioned this. This is an interesting, right out of the gate, Donald Trump named Susie Wiles chief of staff. I want to get the panel's take on this because it was a quick decision, and I think it was the right decision. But this just shows you, I think he's going to act a lot quicker on a lot of positions because he's been around. This isn't his first rodeo. He knows the kind of people, the positions he needs to fill. And Susie, think about this. She's getting everyone from Jeb Bush to Charlie Kirk to say she's the right person. That tells you the kind of person she is. When Trump asked her to speak on election night, she demurred. It was like, no, I'm not. It's not about me. It's about you. It's the right mindset to go into this White House. And let's be honest, how many people have stuck around that long? Not many, right? All right. Before I bring in Steve Cortes and Wesley Donehue, and then, by the way, Seth Keshel is going to be joining us later in the show to actually match up the data with the results. So let's talk. I'm so fascinated to line up what he had predicted based on real data that gave us the road to 270 and everything else with what really happened. Because everyone who says, I didn't understand where this was coming from, wasn't watching the show, wasn't looking at Seth's data. So before I bring in the panel, let me just remind you, it's been a crazy ride, hasn't it? A lot of weird stuff has gone on in the world. Be prepared is what it really comes down to, right? And the way that I'm prepared is I have a Patriot power generator in my house. If you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you can get one too. And I'm just going to tell you that, you never have to worry when you have a Patriot power generator in your house because it powers the most powerful things, refrigerators, tablets, medical devices, you name it. And it powers off of a solar panel that comes free with it. So you don't have to worry about running to the gas station, hoping the gas station's open, hoping the gas station takes credit cards, right? And then running back and forth. Because as long as you have access to the sun, and at least under Donald Trump, it'll be free, then you can power this thing, and it just gives you peace of mind. It's portable, so you can pick it up, bring it inside, no gas, no fumes, no noise. You can bring it over to a friend's house or family members. You will be the savior in the time in something happens. So go to forpatriots.com/Spicer. I know a couple of you have already reached out to me and said, hey, I bought it. I'm excited now. And it does give you peace of mind. I love it because I know if something happens, I've got it sitting here in my basement. It's ready to go. It's easy to use. Got a ton of plugs. Check it out. I'm telling you, you got hours of power when you really need it. All right, let's bring in the panel. Steve Cortes, my former colleague at Newsmax and the founder of the League of American Workers. Great new piece out by him this week we'll talk about. And then Wesley Donehue, the founder of Push Digital. They played in a ton of big races, did some great work, not just in the races, but on the vaulted ground game that Republicans were going to suck at and get their clock cleaned. Wesley was at the front, and the results showed, didn't they? We got the best of the media on that one. All right, gentlemen, good to see you both. Let me just start with Susie Wiles. I think that it's funny that the label, I'm joking about this, but for a guy who's a misogynist, he didn't start off on a strong foot, did he, Steve? It's no. The guy just hired a very strong, competent woman that's winning praise from all across the spectrum.
Yes, selecting a super successful woman to have this critical role, perhaps second in importance only to the president himself, for the new administration shows us that he's about as bad as misogyny, Sean, as he is at racism. He's not very good at either, even though he gets accused of both constantly by the corrupt corporate media. But look, Susie Wiles, to your point about the breadth of her support, right? People like Jeb Bush and Charlie Kirk, who don't agree on much of anything, agreeing that she's a perfect selection. That shows you what she has done in her career and what she has specifically done to the state of Florida. Remember, that used to be the ultimate swing state. In the year 2000, the whole country hinged upon the results of Florida. We on the right don't even worry about Florida anymore. We almost take it for granted, largely because of what Susie Wiles did. Now, there's other folks, President Trump, Ron DeSantis, a lot of people deserve credit. But I think in terms of being the political architect, the behind-the-scenes strategy, no one deserves more credit for what has happened in Florida than Susie Wiles. And because of that alone, Sean, I think she's very worthy of this selection for this super important task.
Wesley, most people don't last too long at the highest levels of Trump world. She has been there now 2 years. And I think that, it's that she's got a nice little quality about her that could make her a very long time serving chief of staff.
It's all about professionalism, Sean. You and I actually had this conversation months ago when we were talking about both LaCivita and Susie. And I said, look, my frustration with politics and the industry is it's the island of misfit toys. You just have a bunch of grifters out there. You got a bunch of unprofessional people. You have a bunch of people they're hanger-oners to important people because they think it's a fast way to get power. But there are some just seasoned professionals in the political industry that are doing this for the right reason. They've got decades of experience running political campaigns, and they're the ultimate professionals. And honestly, both with LaCivita and Susie, but particularly Susie, I can't think of someone who's just a professional's professional. And I can't praise her enough. And I think that she's the perfect person to go in. And like she managed Donald Trump thus far. It was the best run campaign that he's had of the three. And I think she's going to be the perfect person to manage the White House also.
Steve, a lot of people in Trump orbit. You served on that 2020 campaign. If you had to guess who's next, either position or name, what would you think?
Who's next? You mean for managing campaigns going forward?
No. Just the chief of staff name. I was named White House press secretary in December 22nd, and so you think about that. Yeah. That was almost 2 months in. He had named, I think, Reince and Steve Bannon pretty early, but it was a delta then.
Sure.
And so it's funny because I do believe that you're not going to see the same parade of people to Bedminster going up and down elevators at Trump Tower.
Right.
Like he is much more like, I know who, I want Cortes. I want him for this job. I want Wesley Donehue he knows who he wants for a lot of things.
Right.
And I think it's going to be a quicker process. I just am sort of intrigued what's going to come next. Is it another staff job or is it a cabinet?
My suspicion would be more staff jobs first. That seems to make sense and be a little more deliberative about the cabinet positions. Although the great thing about cabinet positions, and this is why these Senate wins are so big, the fact that we're at 53, at least means that he can get confirmed some really MAGA, really patriotic populist people who maybe would have been tough if we were only at 50 or 51 because of a couple of squished Republicans who wouldn't necessarily vote for those folks. So, I think the cabinet selection process probably just got a little more tilted to the right, thankfully. And I think that's a great thing because of what Trump earned and what all these great Senate candidates earned. But to answer your question specifically, one person that I hope gets a role with media, and perhaps he's going to be your successor as press secretary, is Vivek Ramaswamy. I think the way he has handled media.
Wait, you think Vivek for press secretary?
I think it's at least possible, and I think he'd be fantastic at it. I mean, the way he deconstructs the corporate media, the way he takes them on with logic and facts, does so with a smile. It would be incredible, I think, to see him at that podium. I think he'd be a very worthy successor to people like you who did an excellent job at that podium. But we'll see. Look, I have no inside knowledge at all.
No.
I
just, the funny thing is, I could see Vivek as a commerce secretary or something like that. Although who knows?
Sure.
But I'm like, you threw the idea out there, and I'm like, can you imagine that mental jujitsu, like every day, him being like, that's an interesting point. Let me tell you 15 reasons why you're wrong.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
I just don't know that a guy like Vivek takes a staff job like that. Though.
That could
I think,
be. Yeah.
I no, because I was like, I was wondering, man, if you had intel on that. All right.
That's an interesting take. I did Vivek's presidential campaign, and I can promise you what you just said about the mental jiu-jitsu and him tearing apart an argument. I would go to him about running his digital campaign. I would go to him with an idea, and he would be immediately asking questions, tearing it apart. Nobody's better at tearing something apart than Vivek. I never thought about that before, but man, that would be something fun to watch.
I just think it would be fun. Like
it would be.
A lot of people used to love to tune into the briefing. I would now be like, okay, Vivek's on at 1. Let's go. All right. But Wesley, Steve threw that out. I think that's a great, is there somebody you'd like to see in the administration in a key position?
100%. I am a massive RFK fan, man.
I can get the corruption out of the agencies. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science and are allowed to make their own choices, they're going to get a lot healthier.
And Sean, you know this about me, I'm a health enthusiast. I've been a huge admirer of RFK for a very, very long time. And everything he says, I'm obsessed with and have been for forever. So I cannot wait to see RFK get in there. And, maybe health and human services, but I am so stoked to see him take it to big pharma and take it to, these companies that are just filling Americans and our children just full of absolute crap that others don't allow. I'm obsessed with it and very excited.
There's a video, that was made an AI thing. He was a threat to democracy. Trump was, according to the thing, and someone remade this video now. Let me see if I can play this for you. Apparently now he's a threat to the bureaucracy. And that plays off with Wesley saying, let's see if we can play that.
If the Democrats fail, it might be the end of American bureaucracy.
Our bureaucracy really is in fundamental peril.
The foundations of American bureaucracy under attack.
They want to destroy our bureaucracy.
We are a bureaucracy in danger.
We're watching an election where people are on the ballot openly advocating the end of bureaucracy.
That's what Republicans are doing, attacking bureaucracy, attempting to destroy bureaucracy, and they're doing it with glee.
This is the end of bureaucracy in America.
When will America stop sleepwalking towards the end of bureaucracy?
Right. It's Democrats versus, as Bill Kristol says, the end of bureaucracy.
We are essentially, as Neil put it, one vote away from sort of the end of bureaucracy as we know it.
I think our bureaucracy and the stability of that bureaucracy is really the thing on the ballot and really so important.
Look, it's funny. It's a funny little riff, but that's the thing. The thing that in my conversation, Steve, that I've had with some senior folks over the last couple of days, there is a commitment that if you want to serve, you're coming in to shake things up. You're coming in to break some glass, to make the government more efficient, more effective. I mean, to your point about Vivek, this is not like, hey, get a nice title and go to parties. It's Donald Trump knows he's got 4 years and he wants to make some change.
Yeah, and listen, Sean, I think a lot of great things were accomplished in the first term, but my hopes far exceed what happened in the first term for this term. And one of the main reasons is, first of all, of course, experience, which you've touched on. But in addition to that, it seems like the Democrats, thankfully this time, don't have a grand lie, a grand hoax like Russia collusion that they can hang over Donald Trump. And unfortunately, that was very, very difficult for the Trump White House to manage. That entire lie, which the corporate media pushed as just a constant propaganda piece, clearly was a deterrence to Trump achieving more in the first term. It does not seem like they have that kind of dishonest device this time around. And given that, and particularly given that we have a Republican sweep, and I think we're going to have people on the Capitol Hill who are working truly with the president, unlike at times the last time there was Republican control of Washington, D.C. I think, look, expectations are high, and they should be, because there's a lot to do in this country. A lot needs to be done, unfortunately, because of the damage of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but it will get done. And again, I think that not having that Russia collusion hoax hanging over, or something similar hanging over Donald Trump, is going to allow this administration, the Trump-Vance administration, to really, really advance the ball.
Wesley, Steve talked about, I've been joking, which country are they going to say interfered with this win? But here's the Steve was saying they don't have a thing. And here's my theory on this for now. Who knows? Maybe next week they'll come up with some island chain that interfered with the election. But part of the reason I think they've had a hard time, and I'll put up some of the charts on the thing, is when you look at the demographics. They went all in on abortion. Trump did better with women. They went all in on being a racist. He did better with Latinos, with blacks, with his. It's like, oh crap, he won the popular vote by 5 million. It's not as easy to claim that there was some sort of master plan when Rhode Island, is redder than it's ever been, when New Jersey is barely won, when California looks like it's moving in the the red direction. They're screwed because they can't make up a lie, because the math, in my opinion, is just too big to lie about.
Yeah, look, this is just because he was right on all the issues. I was saying going into Election Day that I thought it was going to be a pretty big landslide, because I saw a movement and there was a massive enthusiasm gap between the two. This race was always about Donald Trump. Donald Trump gave people a reason to vote for him, specifically on the woke bull that the country is facing, immigration, and most of all, inflation. Kamala Harris made the entire race about Donald Trump, never gave people a reason to vote for her at all. I was working in these swing states. I saw a true movement behind Donald Trump. And if you were for Kamala Harris, it wasn't because you were for Kamala Harris, it's because you just hated Donald Trump, right? So you were seeing those demographic shifts mostly because of the issues. African Americans, they were sick of the bullshit going on with immigration. African Americans were the ones feeling the cost of living increases the most. So were, low income Hispanics. So are women, who are the ones that are buying the groceries, paying the bills. It's the women. So Donald Trump simply was just right on the issues. And that's why you saw these shifts.
And, Sean, too, I'm glad you mentioned some of these gains in blue places. So places where Trump didn't win, but these gains are momentous. Listen, I lived most of my life in Chicago. He didn't come close to winning Illinois, but he cut the margin in half. It went from 17% last time to 8% this time. And then getting on the more micro level, there's a neighborhood called Little Village in Chicago. It is the barrio. It's a Mexican low-income neighborhood, almost entirely Hispanic. And again, he didn't come close to winning, but last time in Little Village in Chicago, totally Hispanic place, he got 13%. This time he got 32%. Yeah. 2.5 times a take. When you magnify that nationwide, and particularly when you bring it to places that are more swing-like or getting to be swing-like, and New Jersey, of all places, might be that exact spot, which, by the way, has odd year elections, so we can start working on that into 2025. Again, I don't want to get too pie in the sky and dream for too much, but if this administration comes in and governs effectively, again, without that ridiculous lie, that dark cloud, that propaganda dark cloud of something like the Russia collusion hoax, then we could see the map change a lot. And we could actually make what happened this Tuesday seem to be something regular for the American people, and perhaps even gain in places on the map and turn places on the map like New Jersey that seemed impossible just a short time ago.
Wesley, you guys at Push Digital do a lot of, what do they call it? A/B testing? Like, you'll try a message and then see if another. Yeah. Do you think that, to Steve's point, you look at some of these places, these towns and cities that had a vast shift.
Mm-hmm.
Was it that they were voting for Donald Trump, or were they voting against Kamala Harris?
Great question. I don't think anybody was voting against Kamala Harris. This is one of my takeaways. I don't think this race had anything to do with Kamala Harris much at all, to be honest with you. She was almost like a non-present. Nobody was talking about her. Nobody was excited about her. This was a race that was either you were for Donald Trump and ready for change, or you just hated Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris only mattered so much as it's time for something else, and she's the cause of this. But when she jumped in this race, she immediately made everything about Donald Trump, never gave anybody a reason to vote for her or against her. And it was almost like she was a non-presence on the ground. You would go through very liberal areas and you wouldn't see any Kamala Harris signs. You go through rural areas and everything is just Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that, a massive movement. She just was unable to create any sort of traction at all in these swing states.
Steve, you have a piece out where you talk about groceries, guys, and Gen X. Explain to us what you think the takeaways of this election are.
You bet. And listen, I think there's a lot of reasons for this landslide, but I think it's these 3 Gs, and I'm trying to use some alliteration, which that will hopefully be memorable for readers and for your audience, that really drove this. Grocery prices. Look, I found this all over, both through my polling as well as anecdotally, because I spent so much time in the swing states. I made a documentary on this exact topic, a short doc that went completely viral. People were just irate, regardless of their political philosophy. Lots of people who would never call themselves MAGA or America First, they were irate about grocery prices, and much more so than other aspects of inflation. And what we were able to deduce is it's primarily because of the frequency. In other words, if your rent is really going up, it really bothers you, but you pay it once a month. Whereas you're buying food every few days. Most women in America, for example, buy food 10 times a month, we found out. So the frequency of that outrage really, really mattered. So food prices were huge. By the way, that's not just a new term or American phenomenon. Food prices have driven political earthquakes throughout human history, from the French Revolution to the Arab Spring to, I believe, this election that we just had. Food prices were a big part. The guys, I'm talking about men. I think both boys and men, especially young men, are really tired of being told that there's something wrong with their masculinity and that they should be, they should feel guilty, that there's something toxic about being masculine. And they say, no, we're going to reaffirm masculinity. And authentic masculinity is a great thing in America. It's been a big part of the American experience and success. And we're going to reclaim that. And we're going to reject this Democratic Party that has a toxic, feminine, radical feminism that doesn't lift up women, but rather tries to punish men. So I think that was a big part. And then Gen X, and listen, admittedly, I'm sort of tooting my own horn here because it's my age group, middle-aged people, guys and girls. We won this thing. You know, if you look at the popular vote, all of the margin was among Gen X people, all of it. Other groups were either tied or slightly for Harris. And so I find this very fascinating. I believe my thesis is that a big part of this is that those of us who had our formative years in the 1980s have great memories. And this isn't some sappy sentimentalism. It's reality. It's evidence-based that we were in many ways a better, healthier, happier, wealthier country then. And we want that back again, and we can get it back again. And so I really believe that we owe a thanks to Gen X. We carried other demographics over the finish line and produced a mandate that, you know, again, I'm just incredibly excited about. So yeah, please have a look at the 3 Gs in my article. It's on my Substack as well as my Twitter, which is at Cortes Steve.
Wesley, first, let's just say that what are your takeaways from the election?
First off, I think Steve crushed that with the 3 Gs. Well done. You nailed that. So I would agree with all that, especially when it comes to the issues. That's number 1. 2, I mentioned the enthusiasm gap and the lack of traction for Kamala Harris. 3, I got to say, I think this might be the first time in forever that the vice president actually mattered, the vice presidential pick. I cannot tell you how many people after that vice presidential debate, which, by the way, I didn't know people actually watch, like normal people. I know we do, but like normal people, all my friends watched that debate and would not shut up about J.D. Vance. And a lot of people that were on the fence that were like, you know, life was better under Donald Trump, but I really don't like what he tweets. You know, those kind of people, you all hear it. They were swayed by J.D. Vance. So fantastic pick on that front. But then I do have 2 things that I want to just like, when we have these landslides, people overlook the bad things. And 2 things that I just want to caution. First off is screw traditional media. Like, we have got a problem there. We have got a massive problem. Thank God for people like you and Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, and the Trump campaign did a massively beautiful job going around traditional media, using influencers, using podcasters, we have to expand that network and continue to go around the traditional media because they're just against us flat out, and we've got to go around them. And then the fifth thing that I am really freaked out about is our low dollar fundraising mechanism. We relied too much on Elon Musk. The Senate races relied too much on SLF. If we didn't have Elon Musk, we would have been screwed. If we didn't have SLF on the Senate side funding the Senate races, we would have been screwed there. We have got to figure out how to get the Republican low dollar donors giving money, because we're getting outspent 3-1 in a lot of these races, and that's not sustainable.
Yeah, I've got to stop relying on Elon. I've told him, Elon, I'm going to stop taking your money. Well, actually, that's not true. I'll take his money. I'm glad you said that. Let me just in order. I think that one of the great things about the VP point that you bring up is the media went after JD so bad and made him out. That part of what I think to add to your thesis, which you added to Steve's thesis, so we're getting like to volume 4, is that people. It was that when they heard JD speak at that debate, they were like, what? This is not who I was told this guy was. I got more texts from people who said, this guy's impressive. Oh my, like he was empathetic the way that he talked about Waltz, right? And I think that the Dems and the media screwed up because they made him out to be so bad that when people heard him, it was like, even they were like, what? Like it wasn't just like, oh, I like him. It's like you really didn't think you'd like him from what they told you, and when you heard him, you're like, I like him even more. Like they helped him. So that's number one. Number two, I will tell everyone I'm working on an op-ed right now about advice for the next press secretary, and this touches on one of the things. I have a draft right here. And I'll explain this more, but it says, I wrote, go beyond the front row of the press briefing. The Biden campaign, or the Biden press office, stripped hard passes from independent journalists. I was proud to give anyone a pass that wanted. The Trump campaign effectively used long-form podcasts and independent media, and you should highlight that. And that's where I think that's a huge takeaway of success. So I agree. I think the other thing that we're all being smart about is, like, we need to savor the win, but we also need to look, okay, what do we do right? What do we do wrong, so that we build on that? And to Steve's point, we can go win other big races. Let me ask you about this question, though. And I don't know that we're the three best people to answer it, but we're all experienced, politicos. Do you think that either Kamala Harris or Mike Waltz has any kind of political future, Steve? Or, I mean, like, I get it. We're not Democrats, but I can't imagine after this race, no matter the excuses you come up with, I go, thanks for playing.
Right.
Drop your pass off on the way out of the stadium.
No. Sean, listen, we're not Democrats, clearly, but I study the other side very, very closely. As a matter of fact, I spend more time consuming their media than our side's media, because I just think it's important to know who the opposition is and what they're up to. Believe it or not, I watch at least some of Morning Joe every morning. As painful as it is,
Dude, I would rather go to prison than do that.
All right, well,
waking up and getting a kick in the balls every morning.
Yeah, I know. What a horrible way to start your day, Steve Cortes.
I know. But here's my point: is I think I'm a decent student, and I think I can be objective, aside from my obvious philosophical differences and ideological differences from them. And my answer to your question is 0.0 future for Walz or for Kamala Harris. They were talentless.
Yeah.
They exhibited no political skills. Awful at interviews, both of them. In the case of Walz, very strange, very odd guy in a lot of ways.
Weird.
So no, I think they're completely done. If I have to sort of assess the bench, where are the Democrats going? It's going to be Shapiro, who's probably very glad now that he wasn't on this ticket, and it's going to be Newsom. It's going to be the two governors of big states who are popular Democrats who raise a lot of money.
I've always said Pete Buttigieg, and I'll stay on that. And then I think Wes Moore, the new governor of Maryland, has got a really nice resume, and he governs to the left, so he'll do well in the primaries. All right, Wesley, what do you think?
I'd say this about Nikki Haley. Corporate boards are always looking for women to serve. Kamala Harris needs to go make her millions by sitting on corporate boards and sit on a beach drinking margaritas for the rest of her life. That's what I would do.
I don't want her on a corporate board, though, and instilling DEI. I don't need her. No. I get your point, but I also don't need her on the board of somewhere talking about DEI and woke policies. Wesley, one of the things I wanted to ask you about before we went, the one area that I'm a little bummed about is I really thought a couple of these guys in the Senate were going to pull it over the finish line. And Hovde, to me, you guys worked hard on his campaign.
Yeah.
And I just thought he had crested at the right time. Of all of the races, he's the one that I thought, if I thought all three of those guys in the blue states were going to pull it over the finish line, but he was my number one. Like, I just thought that the way the polls were moving, I thought Dave McCormick would make it over the finish line. He did, but I really thought that Eric Hovde would do it.
Yeah, look, we did Moreno, Sheehy, Justice this year, but Hovde's my guy. He's one of my closest friends. I practically moved to Wisconsin for him this year. I'm heartbroken, man. I want to wake up and cry every morning, just to be real. But we had a third party. You got to read the articles. There was a third party candidate named Thomas Leaguer, who the Democrats went to and said, "We are from Team MAGA. We want you to run on the America First ticket." They funded his signature campaign. They gave him money to run a campaign. They funded the lawyers. He got on the ballot under America First. He got 28,000 votes, and we lost by about 27,000 votes. And look, I don't want to be one of these guys that say the election was stolen, but Tammy Baldwin, that's lying to the voters. That's cheating. That's underhanded. And it breaks my heart, man. Absolutely breaks my heart.
Yeah, that like I said, that's the one that I now, as Steve pointed out, we're at 53, which means that's what really matters to me. Yeah. Steve, let me ask you this: as sort of someone of Hispanic descent, the share of Latinos for Trump, 46%. We always talk about this is how you need to pander to this group, blah 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 blah.
Right.
And here's Donald Trump: mass deportations, follow the law. Focus on and it's 46% of I mean, he got 58% in Florida, 58% in Michigan, 55 in Texas. I mean, he bet in Ohio 49-47. Trump got the Latino vote. I mean,
one Hispanic men nationwide. By the way, getting back to the things we were talking about earlier with masculinity, I think men in general revolted against the Democrat Party, but brown men really did because we do believe that there's two sexes, and we believe that the sexes are complementary and that they serve each other by God's design. And so Hispanic men went overwhelmingly for Trump. That's a crushing defeat. And here's one reason why it's crushing. Is that we are the fastest growing demographic in America and the youngest mass demographic in America. Hispanics, on average, are a full decade younger than non-Hispanic Americans. So think about that. When you've got this group ascendant within the America First movement, rallying to the Republican Party, we're a giant cohort already, 60 million people, and we're young overall. That says the future is really, really bright, and that people with names like Martinez and Cortes are going to be key elements of the America First movement, not just winning this race, but governing this country for decades. And Wesley mentioned J.D. Vance, who I just think the world of, somebody I'm very close with, helped in his 2022 campaign. Thrilled that he's vice president. We're going to have a fantastic term with him as vice president, and then he's going to be president. And if we get 12 years of Trump plus J.D. Vance, we can fix so much of what is wrong with this country. And I firmly believe Hispanics are going to be a big element of powering what I think will be a governing dynasty, really, of America First, starting in 2025 and 12 years hence.
I was just doing the math. Barron Trump is 18, 12 years. That gets him to 30. He might have to wait a little while. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you guys for both being here. Really appreciate it. What a way to end a week with you guys. And then we've got Seth Keshel coming up to break down the data. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, love that conversation. I'm ready to bring in Seth Keshel. We're going to match the data with the results. And again, this is why I love this, because we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And we're going to tell you why we got it right, and the media, the legacy left-wing media, doesn't know what they're talking about because it's all vibes and feelings, and they hang out with themselves. We actually base decisions on data and on models and things that actually make sense, not just how many yard signs we saw driving down the thing. Before we get to that, I just want to tell you guys, you've heard me talk about this in the past. I've got some hip issues, some knee issues. For me, I need a good shoe with great support, great cushion. I got turned on to gravity defyer shoes a while ago. I've got a couple pairs of them, not just one. I have one for training, one for running. You could check out, they've got everything these days. They've got like sandals and work shoes and whatever. But like, if you want support or cushions, cushion in your thing, they've got this Verso technology. It's unbelievable. It's like what they make trampolines on. When you put on a gravity defyer shoe, it's like literally walking on a pillow or something. It's awesome. I love running in them. It's more of a jog, let's be honest, or working out or whatever. I have stability and comfort like no other shoe that I've ever worn before. It is a real, it's why so many people are turning to them. And if you know somebody that, has knee or hip or just, wants support and cushioning, you got to check these things out. The orthotics are unbelievable. They come free with every pair. If you go to GDEFY, because it's Gravity Defier, so it's GDEFY.com, and use code SPICER30, guess what? You get $30 off. SPICER30 gets you $30 off your order of $150. This is a great gift for Christmas, birthday, or just, to your favorite runner or walker or workout friend. But like I said, go to the website and check it out. You'll see what I mean. Because now I started with just the running shoe. I've got the training one too. GDEFY.com. Use code SPICER30. All right. I want to bring in our buddy Seth Keshel. Seth, good to see you. I was excited to read. I'm always like, when your column, Captain K's Corner, pops up in my Substack, I get excited because as I tell everyone, I love the data. To me, like, if Trump's not going to win, you'll say, hey, this is why he's not going to win. If he's going to win, here's the thing. But it doesn't lie, right? The data tells you, here's how many votes someone got in the past. Here's where the registration numbers are, blah, 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 blah. What did, just overall, because I want to get into the states, what did you think about the results and where you just like, again, broadly speaking, where you thought the race ended up?
I was irate over the Seltzer poll of Iowa. And
of course,
as you know, we've talked about that. Newt Gingrich talked about it as well. And I issued a column before Election Day about the Seltzer poll. And voter registration trend, of course, was my guiding light. And what happened was, and I laid all these results out last night in Iowa, 99 counties, all 99 had a Republican Party registration shift, and 97 of them are further right this year than they were last time. And the 2 that aren't are still counting and are likely to end up further right than they were in 2020. So it was probably going to be 99 out of 99. That's been there in the data, and it's provable going back decades, as far back as you'll find the numbers. So I put out this column. It's like Iowa's definitely Trump plus 10. Well, Iowa wound up Trump plus 13. So all through election night, I was like, hey, here's this poll. Wrong. Voter registration analysis for the win. And then when I saw Duval County trending Trump won Duval County in Florida, I was like, this is going to be Georgia for Trump. And sure enough, there's Georgia for Trump and to the right of Duval County, like it always lands. So party registration for the win. That also took Pennsylvania. And then
let's get into it, because I want to, you name checked Georgia. So let's get into this. The final call. You did it on the show. You said the pessimistic model, in the worst case scenario, Harris wins by 0.4, but you said based on the Duval County model and everything, Trump ends up just north of 5. You're not that far off here. I mean, he ended up, 2 and change, right? So he gets the win. That's not bad right off the bat.
Yeah, my average miss in the 7 decisive states was 1.3%. And
I mean, you got it right though. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, but there's factors that happen on election day in terms of who actually shows up. That's not a bad place to be, though.
Oh, 100%. Now, Georgia wound up at 2.2. I think I called it somewhere in the middle between registration because I thought
you did.
Bullish. I called it a 4.1.
Right. Okay. And it ends up at 2 point. But then, all right, let's move to your state of Arizona. Right. Here's your final prediction. Pessimistic model, 1.4. Registration model, Trump, 5.8. I got Trump right now at just about 6. You're basically right on the bullseye.
I'm right on the bullseye with the registration model. And the thing about registration model is when somebody that normally votes for one side crosses over to the other, it accelerates this. So what has been noticeable to me in highly urbanized states with large Latino populations, we've got a really strong move to the right. I did not see Texas going 14 points for Trump. I thought that this year would be the year Florida went right of Texas, but Florida's at 13, Texas is at 14. California, now I don't know how the late counting is going to go and who that's going to favor, but California is at 17 points right now, which is 12 points to the right of 2020. New Mexico was off to the right. So I think that Arizona may be, depending on how these late ballots come in, Arizona may be about to go vintage, old school, 8 to 10 point style Arizona. And if that happens, it's going to be a boon for Kari Lake.
All right, Nevada. So you don't think Kari Lake is done, yes?
No, I think the math favors Kari Lake. I don't know that Maricopa County in their ballot counting process favors her, but the math looks good for Kari, especially if Trump rolls over.
Right, so we don't count her out. Nevada, you had the pessimistic model, Harris 1.1. The registration model in Nevada, you had at Trump 3.6. It came in at 3. You're right there. You're back on the bullseye again.
Pretty solid. Once again, a largely urbanized state with a big Latino population. That shift is absolutely enormous for our future.
Well, okay, so then let's stick with the end states. Moving down the alphabet, you're in North Carolina. You said that right now that you the net shift in that direction from 20 to 24 was 3.9% for the Republicans. You end up with Trump winning that state 3.5.
Trump is up there in the mid threes, and I think my registration analysis had him at over 6 possibly.
Yeah, 6.3.
And my pessimistic forecast was 1.4. So that wound up almost right in the middle of my pessimistic and my
No. But this is I'll quote you to you. It says these averages out to 3.9, splitting the difference. That's where you thought we were. He's at 3.5. I mean, it's just like you're right there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just the thing that's so funny is that, no one's going to be, 100. You can't, it'd be impossible because you have to know exactly, people have car accidents, sicknesses, kids that are late or whatever. But that's, to have right now, let's get into Pennsylvania for a second. The final call, you said the pessimistic model was Trump 1, +1, and then the registration model was Trump 4.6. These two models average out to Trump at 2.8, which is just shy of the county by county registration model. He's at just about 2, just plus or minus 2 right now. You're right there again.
Yeah, not a bad call. And then, of course, here's the one that's really going to get you, Sean. How have I pegged Michigan? People have always asked me, what do you do for Michigan? There's no party registration. It's a political cousin of Pennsylvania, and it has been since World War II, basically. And Michigan was 33,000 votes left of Pennsylvania in 2016. And it was 73,000 left of Pennsylvania in 2020 for an average of 53,000 left. So that was my model. I had it left of Pennsylvania. And Michigan right now is 55,000 left of Pennsylvania as the results are.
You mentioned the Latino shift, the Hispanic shift. I brought this up earlier on the show. Trump did the best with Hispanics that any Republican, 46%. But I mentioned this earlier. I'll put the chart up. But Florida, 58. He got 58% of the Hispanic vote. 58% in Michigan. 55% in Texas. 50% in North Carolina. 49% in Ohio to her 47. 48 in Nevada. 43 to 57 in Wisconsin. But even in Arizona, 42-55. For a guy that everyone in the media said was horrible for Hispanics and wanted to lock everyone up and throw them out of the country. Not too bad, huh?
No, not bad at all. And people don't know how to talk to the Hispanic voters. They look at the failures of the Republican establishment all those years to get Hispanic votes. And really, they want border security, they want educational opportunities, and they want a good economy. And they big time look at the Texas Rio Grande Valley counties, all back Donald Trump. You've got Starr County that went for Donald Trump, hasn't backed a Republican since 1892. Webb County for Donald Trump. Hidalgo, Cameron counties for Trump, and 41% in El Paso.
Is there anything when you looked at the data from any of these states, the popular vote, anything that you, as a guy that's so data driven, were shocked by?
New Jersey, 5 points. Illinois, 8.5 points. I had all these states. Those were some of the ones that I missed on, that I thought that New Jersey would be bigger than 8 points for Harris. I thought that Illinois would probably go 10 or more for Harris. So the urban vote is really good. Now, it's depressed in most areas. This is why I'm focusing in on Milwaukee County right now, which we don't have to cover that at the second. But there's a big blueprint now from 2020. All the questions about 2020, a lot of them have been answered here in 2024. And I think they really give election folks something to focus on for cleaning things up. In Arizona right now, there's going to be a massive mandate to clean up the way elections are reported, even if it's done in accordance with the law. You imagine right now if the Electoral College was hung and we were waiting for Arizona to report its results, what kind of state this country would be in right now?
It's funny you bring that up. I always say we end up like, we talked a little bit on this morning meeting show that I do every day about the Electoral College. And because no one ever cares about faithless electors, if it had been 270 to 268, people would have been losing their minds over faithless electors, something that happens all the time, but no one cares because it doesn't matter. And that's what I think is when you have landslides, no one pays attention to the small problems.
Correct. And you also had the possible scenario if Trump would have won Nebraska's 2nd congressional district and wound up with 269 to Harris's 269. There was a scenario for that. It would have been Trump with Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada with none of the blue wall. That would be heading for a contingent election in the U.S. House. You'd be in for 2.5 months of 2 months of the biggest hell that we've ever seen in America. And fortunately,
well, and by the way, can you imagine you're going to get a speaker election because the House is tight? I mean, this would have been a nightmare.
100%. Now, we avoided that because Trump was well on his way to winning this thing on election night. In Pennsylvania, he ran strong in Philadelphia County. That's the reason why we weren't down to the wire in Pennsylvania, is because Trump trended Philly County about 6 points further to the right than it was in 2020, which was further right than it was in 2016. So Trump's progress in Philly County proper has been instrumental in carrying Pennsylvania.
On a personal level, you got a lot of people who have decried your method, said whatever, and yet you have a pretty darn good record that I just read off of. I mean, and it's not like it's data driven. And so how vindicated do you feel on a personal level?
Well, it feels good. It's a lot of people help teach me this kind of stuff. I've got the God-given talent that I've always had in between the years, but I've taken a lot of heat for this. And 2020, good and well that I don't feel good about what happened in 2020. And a lot of these registration indicators were blown in 2020, where some of them went right, which is like, why was Florida accurately predicted by the registration shift, but Pennsylvania was not? Why were the other states in North Carolina? Why was it not? So to me, unless it's blown up by something completely external, like a manufactured crisis over a pandemic, or media narratives, or covering up the Hunter Biden laptop story, that party registration indicator is the most successfully predictive forecasting tool that you have. And it's right there in open source data. So as a military intelligence officer, one of my favorite disciplines to review was open source intelligence, because people are always looking for that crafty James Bond stuff where they can really put classified information out there. But in fact, the enemy takes 70% of what they learn about us from open sources, soldiers' Facebook accounts, stuff that gets printed on the front page of the newspaper about troop movements. So likewise, most of what you need to forecast the drift of elections is available with open source data, and also by studying the way the campaigns behave. You want to know why Harris wasn't competitive in Iowa? Is because she never showed up there, and neither campaign ever put resources in Iowa.
Right.
Texas. Yeah. How did you know Texas should have gone to the right? Harris didn't have the same lingo about Texas going to turn blue. Minorities are going to turn Texas blue. In fact, minorities happen to be what saved Texas. And Texas moving at 14 points Republican has now put that out to sea like Florida, probably for the rest of our lifetime.
Good. Seth Keshel, always, I'm so excited. You made our jobs easier. You gave our viewers great information to make decisions, to know where to come. And we hit it on the nail. Donald Trump will end up with 312 electoral votes. And we based a lot of that off people like you. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for coming here. Keep it coming. Really appreciate it. Guys, we got a big show headed your way next week. We're going to be here all week. Monday is Veterans Day. But guess what? This veteran's showing up. We'll be here all week. We got a lot of news to break down with the transition, key staff hires. So stick with us all week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on the Sean Spicer Show. Feel free to sign up for that newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.